Call this meeting of the Pittsburg City Commission to order. Would you join me in the flag salute, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd just like to say item C has been pulled from the agenda tonight and will be put on at a later date. So we'll move to public input. If there's anybody here to speak under public input, please come forward, state your name and what you're to talk about. Seeing none, we'll close public input and move to the consent agenda. Are there any items to be removed this evening?
If there's no questions or comments, I'll move to approve.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call vote.
Gray.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Ketterman.
Aye.
Munsell.
Aye.
Mernan.
Aye.
Consider the following. Ordinance number G 1251. Consider ordinance number G 1251, amending section 6-1 of the Pittsburg City Code regarding penalties for purchase, possession, or consumption of alcoholic liquor or cereal malt beverages by a person under the age of 21. Mindy?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. As Henry noted at the last commission meeting, staff met and we are recommending a revision to City Ordinance 6-1 and 6-2 as it relates to entry of under the age of 21 into drinking establishments that also consider themselves as restaurants. We are not changing the 60-40% rule, but we did create restaurant hours from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. for those drinking establishments that cannot meet the 60% rule. So basically, if 60% of your gross revenues do not come from food, currently, you can't let anyone in under the age of 21. So in effect, again, while we're not changing the 60% rule, we are creating restaurant hours that would allow a person under the age of 21 to enter a bar and grill type place for the purpose of consuming food. I believe at the last commission meeting there were some issues regarding what actually defines or constitutes a restaurant, meaning can we reheat a frozen pizza and call ourselves a restaurant? The answer to that is no. We have a very well-defined document that the police department, the court, the city clerk uses to define the procedures for enforcement of 6-2. It defines what gross revenue means. It requires a menu, it requires a kitchen, it requires inspection, it requires quarterly reporting. So that's a no. But should you pass the recommended changes for 6-1 and 6-2, we will go back in and we will revise our current procedures to mirror or reflect the changes in those ordinances.
Yeah, and I did have that question last week, and I know that you guys got me some information relative to that, so I appreciate it, and that answered my question. I'm comfortable with that.
Any other questions?
So there are no foreseeable concerns then in terms of, from the perspective of the police department as a result of such a change?
Well, I mean, we hope not. Most of our bars and that do serve food do a great job, and they report and do what they're supposed to do, and I have no reason to believe that that won't happen. But should we have problems, we'll certainly come before you and let you know.
I'd move to approve.
I'll second.
Been moved and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. This is ordinance G-1252. Since she's already covered that, do I even need to read through it, or we just go ahead and?
There's no formal requirement that you have to read that out loud.
Okay, so do we need to take another vote on
Yes,
this one?
yes.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Aye. Yes, me.
Okay.
Sorry, I was
Been
reading.
moved and seconded. That's all right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mindy.
Request to rezone. The Planning and Zoning Commission, in its meeting of April 25th, 2016, voted unanimously to recommend governing body approval of a request submitted by Skip Motzenbacher of Point Royale Development to rezone properties in the 500 block of East 29th Street and the 600 block of East 30th Street from R1C family or single family residential to RP3 planned medium density residential to allow for the future residential development of senior housing. Troy?
That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Mayor and Commission, as you stated, on April 25th, at our normal planning and zoning meeting, we held a rezoning hearing. As part of that, let's see, let me get up on the screen there. There were some maps in your packets, and if it pops up here, I'll show you. That the area was just west of Community Health, and then also just south of that, at the end of 29th Street. 29th Street is kind of it's a street that's a little narrower, but towards the end of that street, there's some lots that are kind of undeveloped. So as part of that, the Skip and his group at Point Royale were looking to rezone those. Currently, they're single-family residential. There is commercial zoning just to the north and northwest of it. There's also multifamily zoning just to the west of it. So what they're wanting to do is kind of be in concordance with this and rezone it. If you remember, I think it was back in probably February or March, they had put an application for a Light C grant with KHRC as part of this. So this is kind of the normal process as part of that application that need to be rezoned. So I don't know if I've got maps or not. Have you guys all got maps in front of you?
I'm waiting on you.
So, well, I got it up here. It's just not going up there. I don't know if they got it plugged in back here. Just have a malfunction. As part of, there we go. So as you see up here, this is Joplin Street. This is Michigan Street. Here's 30th Street that was built as part of the development up here. It basically leads into this lot here. The other lot is basically a lot that's just to the south of that. As part of that development, you could see there was a sample layout of what something might look at in the future. Like I said, we have no site plans or anything yet. Right now, we're just looking at initially rezoning the lots to begin that process. And that's kind of the first step in the process. If it moves ahead in a future date, we will have, there may be some replatting involved, and there will also be site plan approval that will need to be done by planning and zoning as well. So, as part of that, I wanted to show you here just as great, it's not responding.
Was there any opposition or concerns relative?
We had some neighbors that did come. They were just wanting to make sure that they wanted to know what was going to be in there. They voiced concerns when the development was done north of them, how some things, if some things weren't handled correctly. Like I said, we did a lot of research. I tried to keep in touch with everyone. I have let them know that before anything moves ahead, there'll be a site plan review that must be done. So and I told them as a courtesy, we would contact all the people that were there that night to let them know before something moves ahead. As part of our master plan that was done, it actually did show this area as kind of a heavy density residential. So this is kind of in line with what our master plan shows.
So your answers to their questions satisfied their concerns for the
Yeah,
time being?
yeah. I mean, I think for the most part, they were, like I said, they were just wanting to know what was going to be there. They didn't want something, that.
I'm seeing some hedge being,
So there. I mean, when the area was done to the north of them, there was some complaints of trees removed and so forth. There were some complaints that were brought up that, if I live here, what's going to be in my backyard, that kind of thing. With our zoning the way it is, if anything is developed here that's multifamily, we'll have to have a site plan approval. Anything that butts up against single family will be required to have fencing around it and so forth. So we will try to, like I said, like we do with if it's apartment complexes or something, it'll be sheltered from what's around it.
so the first stage, what you communicated to them is the first stage is to change the zoning, but
Correct.
if there's anything to be built, there would be a site plan to be
Correct,
reviewed
yeah.
by the commission and approved.
Yep. This is just like I said, the beginning process. Someone could go in there tomorrow and build a 5-bedroom house, that anybody could live in tomorrow. There's no, since it's single family. If they're wanting to do something, kind of a layout where it's different areas, different. If it's a small apartment complex, or they've got little bunch of single family houses that are closer together, it requires like a site plan removal or approval.
Okay.
If there's no further questions, I move to approve.
Second.
As your motion tonight, I might, as part of this, with the approval or denial, I'm also asking that you approve ordinance G 1253 and as part of that motion. So I really want to state
And what
that.
is G53?
What was that?
What is that?
What's that
As
ordinance?
G 1253, that's basically the rezoning ordinance, is what it is. So,
Okay, well, just a minute then. Let me reread what I'm approving.
sorry.
Just
We're
explain-
approving planning and zoning's recommendation,
Correct.
which includes
Ordinance
G 1253.
Correct.
Move to approve the recommendation.
Second, yeah.
Moved and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item D, Community Health Center, Southeast Kansas. Loan consideration, the recommendation of the Economic Development Advisory Committee to provide a loan in the amount of $100,000 to Community Health Center of Southeast Kansas at zero interest to be repaid over 3 years. With the funding to be used for necessary renovations and building repairs to the building located at 3101C North Michigan, which will house an outpatient substance abuse treatment program.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's my pleasure to present yet another opportunity to grow with Community Health Center of Southeast Kansas. They've just been a juggernaut in terms of growth and job creation over the last several years. This is a $100,000 request related to a new project, and I'm going to ask Krista Postai to give you a brief synopsis of, and then I'll come back up and talk about the EDAC recommendation related to that project. So, Krista.
Thank you. I do want to clarify, the acquisition of what is now the TFI building is to relocate the non-clinical staff that are now in the existing building. Administration, billing, medical records. We're occupying the space that was partially behavioral health services and our big lobby and our pharmacy, and to take all these folks and move them over and allow the expansion of behavioral health to include the addiction treatment program. So the original conversation was to make that a separate, distinct building, but the real, it is an illness, it is a diagnosis, it belongs in a medical treatment facility integrated with all the other resources and services, so it made sense just to expand behavioral health and, like I said, get non-essential, non-clinical people out of the space. The plan would be to get everybody moved over in July. We did get a federal grant to expand our addiction treatment services to an evidence-based model that uses medication to actually overcome the symptoms of medical detoxification, all done on an outpatient basis. We have collaborated with Crawford County Mental Health and the resources they offer, but again, statewide, resources have been minimal. Options have been very limited for folks who have been addicted to prescription medicines, which now is the #1 cause of death, accidental death in the United States, in Kansas, and even more so in Southeast Kansas. People are dying of prescription drug overdoses. And we believe that it's critical that we step in and address that. Our federal grant would allow us to add 8 full-time professional positions. These are higher salaried folks. So this is truly an economic development aspect, as well as the treatment. You can continue work while you're undergoing the treatment. So it has a lot of impact on the overall quality of life in Southeast Kansas. We're not going to overcome our own problems unless we begin to look at the things that are keeping us back. So the building itself was originally, they asked $850. We negotiated that down to $737,500, but we also discovered there needed to be some improvements. We need to buy equipment. It needs to match our building. But the paint's minimal, things like that. So we're also going to run high-speed fiber to the building. All our facilities are now connected by high-speed fiber. What will happen in that building by October 1, we're going to create a central call center for all of our 11 clinics in Southeast Kansas and move all that staff into that one call center to do scheduling, also medical triage, medication refills, all those kinds of things, which will create additional new positions. We think that will also create 6 new positions, but that's not till later in the year. So that building will actually generate new jobs as well. Does that summarize what we're trying to do?
It's great.
Okay,
Great job.
I'll sit down then.
Thank you. Great.
Sure, if I talk to you.
Well, The original request was a $100,000 forgivable loan to support this. The EDAC loved the project, wanted to help, felt since the city has been in a position to help this community health center with forgivable loans in the past, maybe we balance this one with a repayable loan to make sure that that money is there for the next project, but at the same time recognize the tremendous work that community health center has done, not only for the health of the community, but also job creation. So the recommendation to you tonight, Mr. Mayor, is a $100,000 repayable loan to be repaid over 3 years at 0% interest. And that interest rate or lack thereof is intended to acknowledge the incredible growth that the community health center has experienced and the number of jobs that they've created. So with that, be happy to answer any questions.
If no questions, I'll move to approve.
One moment.
Oh,
Mr. Mayor, for the purposes of conflict, I will be abstaining from this vote.
As will I.
Okay. Commissioner Mernan and Commissioner Johnson will be abstaining. So have a motion to approve from Commissioner Gray.
I'll second it.
Second from Chuck. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Then you try and vote anyway.
Motion carried. Okay.
I'm up here a while.
You're gonna be here.
Yes, sir.
We'll
I'm just going to get comfortable.
get well acquainted by the
Yes,
time
sir.
this one's over.
Busy, Blake.
Okay, item E, Art Forms Gallery Funding Request. Consider the recommendation of the Economic Development Advisory Committee to grant the request submitted by Art Forms Gallery LLC for an injection of $4,500 from the revolving loan fund to assist it with renovating the classroom at their facility located at 620 North Broadway.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. This is a little different request than we've received in the past. This is an artist cooperative that's located downtown, 620 North Broadway, that really allows for our local artists to have an outlet to not only place their art, but also sell the art. We actually have some representatives. Sue Horner is here with us tonight, and Sue does a great job of describing their project. We're going to kind of do some tag team presentations this evening. I'm going to ask Ms. Horner to come up and briefly describe their project, and then more importantly, I will come back and talk about why the EDAC felt like this was a good investment from the Economic Development Fund. So, Sue, would you mind giving us an update? Yeah, you bet.
Good evening.
Evening.
Art Forms Gallery has been developed as an artist cooperative. We have 18 members at present with a target of 22. And a cooperative means that we pay the rent and cover the costs. And in return, a commission is not charged when we sell art. And a secondary component, our objective is to have a place for people to come and appreciate and purchase art in Pittsburgh, rather than people having to go out of town to Joplin, Kansas City, Tulsa, etc. And we are also trying to link up with Fort Scott, Chanute, other towns that are trying to develop an artistic community as well, so that we can become a corridor of art galleries for the point of tourism. Anyway, we have the 18 members and are looking forward to providing classes in art and different media, and having those opportunities available to our community as well. At present, people are coming in from Lawrence to teach art classes here in Pittsburgh, and we have those resources right here. We also have people going to Joplin to take art classes. Again, we have the resources here and would like to keep that money in the community, and believe it'll be an enhancement to the community.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
And as the EDAC heard the different needs that the art forms organizers had, they were particularly interested in renovating their classroom space that would allow not only adult art classes, but also children's art classes, because data does show that communities that embrace art education and culture and arts tend to be more conducive for economic growth. So they thought that, considering it's a relatively small request at $4,500, one-time request, and that it would go to renovate that classroom space that would allow for a community adult and child art classes, that this did have an economic development component. So the recommendation from the EDAC is a one-time injection of $4,500 into the Art Forums Gallery project.
I just have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
I may have missed it. Who owns the building?
John Coots.
Okay. And so there's a lease
Yes,
in
ma'am.
place? with
Yes,
this
and the
particular-
different artists have all pooled their own personal money to be able to guarantee rent for the first year. So they certainly have their own skin in the game.
Any other questions?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Been moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item F, Broadband Infrastructure. Consider the recommendation of Economic Development Advisory Committee to contribute $100,000 from the revolving loan fund toward the city's 2016 total anticipated cost of approximately $300,000 for broadband infrastructure to consist of the build-out of primary trunk lines throughout the city.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. This project is related to the broadband infrastructure that Pittsburgh has recently received, and Jay obviously has spearheaded this project from the very beginning, so he'll bring you up to speed on the details. This literally took 3 seconds in the EDAC meeting because there's no doubt that this is an economic development asset for our community. But what exactly the money will be used for, I'm going to turn it over to Jay for that. Thanks, Jay.
Mayor and Commissioners, as you remember, last year we approved several franchise agreements with some new internet service providers in town, and the result of that has been a lot of orange conduit going in the ground all over the place. You might have noticed that. In the 18 months approximately that they've been working on this, we've put in about 100 miles of conduit in the ground. That's a lot. That's a lot for a town of about 13 square miles. So, and one of the pieces of the franchise agreement was that the city would be allowed to co-locate when they put the conduit in the ground. Now, it wasn't going to be free. We would have to pay for the materials, the conduit itself, and a part of the labor cost to put it in the ground. And that's what this represents. This is that cost, right? The total, all of the trunk lines that have been basically laid up to this point, and this is the city's share of that work that's been done. The goal, what we're trying to do is spread that cost out amongst the different elements of the city that benefit from the new conduit. So we have about a third of it from economic development funds, a third of it from utility funds, and a third of it from the general fund. So we're going to spread that cost. And this is the basic trunk lines. Now the city will now be actually the owner of a very redundant, large connectivity with all of the conduit that's all over the place, actually more than the other individual providers. And that down the road is going to suit us very well for a lot of the purposes that we have in mind, as well as potentially to service those other providers. We can actually become an aggregation point and allow multiple levels of redundancy through our own infrastructure. We don't have that in place yet, but that's where this goes. That's where this can go. All right. Some of the things that by the way, the private investment that's been made in internet infrastructure within the next 2 years, all right, it will be over $10 million worth of internet infrastructure that's being placed in Pittsburgh. That's a very significant investment by the private sector. Some of the connectivity that we're going to be benefiting from, eventually we're going to connect obviously all of our buildings with fiber. We're going to be able to connect our traffic signals. We're going to be able to connect other areas, other remote sites like our lift stations with fiber optics. Right now we're using radios to do that, and it's less stable. We're also being able to connect to other jurisdictions. Part of the franchise agreements were net service agreements that we have with a couple of the providers to provide access to other jurisdictions. That is part of this connectivity as well. We're already connected to the county, as you remember that. So there's a lot of value to this that we've experienced, and as Blake indicated, it's hard to overestimate the economic development impact of the fiber infrastructure that we've laid. So, do you have any questions about it?
I just have a quick question, and I maybe should already know the answer to this, but what other communities in southeast Kansas are even comparable in terms of their network? I think Chanute maybe had done some work on that front where does this put us from a competitive edge over some of the other municipalities in southeast Kansas?
Well, again, without having done any serious
I know,
studies.
I'm putting you on the spot,
But
'cause I hadn't-
it would be, I would be very surprised if any other community, even Chanute, has the infrastructure in place that we have. It's unique, I think, for cities our size.
There's no questions, I'll move to approve.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks, Jay.
All right, item G. Target industry analysis. Angelou? Angelou, okay. Economics considered the recommendation of the Economic Development Advisory Committee to utilize $70,000 from the revolving loan fund to contract with Angelou Economics to conduct a target industry analysis and business recruitment strategy for the city.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This would be a crucial part of our economic development strategy this year, a focused effort on recruiting those kinds of businesses that may actually be interested in a community like Pittsburg. A selection committee of Commissioner Johnson, Marty Beasley, who's the EDAC chair this year, and myself, considered different proposals because there are experts that do this, really help you hone down your business recruitment efforts. Angelou Economics was clearly the one that we felt was the best fit for Pittsburgh. They've got well over 600 clients that they've done this for, both in the public and private sector. But more importantly, they've worked in this area. They've done work for communities like Bartlesville and Parsons, and they've done work in communities even smaller than Pittsburgh. So we weren't going to get a recommendation that they've issued for a larger community and just try to downsize that. I did a lot of reference calls just to make sure that it wasn't going to be some sort of cookie cutter study that would be the same regardless of where it was. Every one of the clients that I contacted felt like Angelou Economics was far and above the best at what they do. They also do site selection for companies, which brings an interesting perspective to it because they're working on behalf of companies, looking for communities, perhaps like ours. And at the end of the day, Mayor, what this really does is it makes us more efficient because there are millions of companies out there, and right now we're chasing everyone. And certainly if someone calls us, we will answer the phone. But this really helps us refine and focus in on companies and employers, especially larger employers that are looking for a community of our profile. And one reason we feel like this will work is 3 years ago we did the hotel, retail, restaurant feasibility study, and within 18 months we were able to attract 5 new restaurants and secure the La Quinta deal. First of all, because we were going after the right kinds of businesses, but then secondly, and probably more importantly, we had the data that when we got a bite, we had the information ready that our consultant knew that they would request. So they had already provided that for us, and it makes for a quicker turnaround and helps business leaders make that decision to invest in our community. The cost for the plan itself is $60,000. The EDAC felt like travel on top of that for the Angelou crew to travel to Pittsburgh would not exceed $10,000, so the total request is $70,000 from the RLF to support this target industry analysis from Angelou Economics. The timeline is roughly 4 months from when they would be able to begin, so really starting in June, we would have our recommendations by the end of September or so, and they would be here to present that to you as the commission and answer any questions that you might have, particularly as it relates to the methodology. So again, I'm not a big fan of studies that just sit on shelves, but that's not what this will be. This really helps make us more effective and more efficient in our business recruitment efforts. So I know I provided a lot of information in the commission packet, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
No question?
No questions, I move to approve.
Second.
Moved and second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you.
Carried.
Thanks, Blake.
Okay, non-agenda reports and requests. Jamie, your bi-monthly budget review?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Blow this up a little bit. I'm here to present the bi-monthly budget review for April 30th of this year. It's 4 months of the fiscal year, 33% has passed. At this time, there's really not a whole lot. Everything's performing well. The only one little spot I'm got my eye on is the water utility sales, which, if you recall last year, they were underperforming at this time as well, and then they caught up in the summer and fall. So I'll continue to watch that. We started the year out with 9.5 million. We currently got 12.1 million in the bank. Sales tax for April is down 0.8%. That's the third month in a row on sales tax that it's been down. We started out in January, I think we were up 3%, and it's been 3 months in a row of underperformance compared to last year at the same period. I don't know, it just seems to be flat so far this year. I originally had 2% plugged in to the adopted 2016 budget for sales tax growth. When I present the 2017 budget, I'll have the 2016 estimated numbers at that time, and it's looking like I'm probably going to downgrade that to 1% growth for the year. I'm sure we'll pick up from this negative 0.8, but I don't think we're going to make 2. Has anybody got any questions on anything?
Looks good. Looks very good.
Are we thinking any of that? I know last time you presented on that, you were questioning what might be causing that. Are we still believing that that could be potentially from just delays in getting money from the state?
That was just my personal speculation. I really don't have any idea if that is what's going on or not. I know the state has their problems, yes.
I hear you. All right.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, sir.
One thing we can be sure of on the sales tax, we look at it every month, every year, and there's really just no pattern. It's just some months it comes in, some months it doesn't. It usually works out in the end. Jamie's really good about estimating it. I still think we'll hit 2%, but I've been here 4 years and I have no idea what it's doing.
But we're 30 days behind, right?
It's actually, this April sales tax would have been for the month of February.
Okay.
It's
So
maybe February.
So the numbers yet don't include anything from the national championship being in town or anything like that?
Probably not.
Okay,
We'll see how May looks.
right, yeah. Okay.
Any other ones?
I don't think so.
I have a thank you card I want to read here. It's addressed to Darren. It says, Darren, thanks to you and the commissioners for hosting the lunch after the groundbreaking and for support of you and your staff have given to Kansas Crossings. Bruce Christensen and Nancy Seitz.
And thanks to the county, they picked up half that tab, so it's all the same taxpayers, I know, but that was a good day.
That was a good day. If there's nothing else to come before commission, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.